If you're the kind of focused learner who's always looking to optimize your day, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're tackling something I think literally every single one of us struggles with. The feeling, right? It's one of those low motivation days, you've got this massive mountain of work just staring back at you, and honestly, the mere thought of starting feels like trying to push a giant boulder up a hill. But what if I told you the secret to unlocking your productivity isn't some massive total life overhaul? Actually, scratch that. It's way simpler. It's just about mastering your next 5 minutes. Okay, let's dive right into this. Seriously, why is sitting down to actually do the work always infinitely more painful than the work itself? Well, it all comes down to this immense mental friction. When you look at a looming, difficult task, maybe it's studying for a huge exam or writing up a really complex report, your brain immediately sees a massive threat to its energy reserves. So that resistance you're feeling, it's not laziness, no way. It's actually just your brain desperately trying to protect you from what it thinks is going to be this overwhelming energy drain. And man, this leads us right into the ultimate trap. How many times have you said this exact sentence to yourself? Tomorrow I'll finally fix my routine. I'll study for hours and I'll exercise. We constantly overpromise, but then, tomorrow rolls around, you hit snooze, you start doom scrolling on your phone, and suddenly it's night again. It is so frustrating, right? The frustration just builds because we set the barrier to entry way too high, which practically guarantees we're going to fail before our feet even hit the floor. So how do we bypass this biological resistance? Let's get into section 1, the 5-minute psychological hack. The 5-minute rule is, it's surprisingly simple, but absolutely incredibly potent. You aren't committing to reading 6 heavy textbook chapters or sweating it out on a treadmill for an hour. You're committing to just 5 minutes. That is literally it. By doing this, you're taking a massive, overwhelming goal and shrinking it down into a tiny, bite-sized piece. And the magic here is that your brain no longer registers it as a massive threat. All of a sudden, just starting, it feels completely doable. Let's break down exactly how this tricks your brain on a cognitive level. First up, it completely slashes mental resistance. Anyone can endure just about anything for 5 short minutes, right? Second, it primes the mind. By just engaging with the task a little bit, you transition out of that state of avoidance and right into a state of action. And third, it builds momentum. Checking off that tiny task gives you this great little hit of dopamine, a quick sense of pride. And that pride is exactly the fuel that effortlessly drives you to just keep going. Let's transition from theory into practice with section 2, priming body and mind. Now, what's really interesting about this is how we actually apply it. Behavioral science tells us we need a trigger. Basically, you want to tie your 5-minute action to an existing habit, so your very first trigger is simply waking up in the morning. When your eyes open, you don't reach for your phone to check social media, which, let's be honest, is basically inviting 50 strangers to dump their thoughts into your brain before you've even brushed your teeth. Instead, you take this action. 5 minutes of mindset. Before the absolute chaos of the day begins, spend your first 5 awake minutes practicing gratitude or just visualizing what a successful day looks like for you. Studies actually show that getting a quick mood lift this early in the day fundamentally alters your motivation. It induces this genuine desire to improve yourself and gives you a real sense of calm control. You're actively taking charge of your mental state before the world demands your attention. Which leads us perfectly to our next immediate trigger. You've done your mental priming, and now the trigger is the physical act of getting out of bed. What we're doing here is building a chain of tiny habits. One small successful 5-minute block naturally triggers the next one, creating this amazing cascade of positive momentum. And the best part? It takes virtually zero willpower to maintain once you get it rolling. So the action tied to getting out of bed is 5 minutes of light movement. Notice I said light. We are definitely not asking you to hit the gym for some grueling heavy weightlifting session at 6 a.m. We just mean simple stretching, maybe some yoga, a brisk walk around your room, or a couple of push-ups. Just 5 minutes to get your heart rate slightly up. This really isn't about fitness, it's all about neurochemistry. You're improving blood flow and sending vital oxygen straight up to your brain. I love this analogy. Think of this as turning on the Wi-Fi for your brain. Your body is the router, and your brain is the device. If the router isn't powered up and functioning properly, your device is never ever going to connect to the network. If your body stays sluggish and dormant, your brain is going to remain foggy and disconnected no matter how hard you try to focus. Those 5 minutes of movement, they are literally flipping the switch. Of course, it's super easy to be calm at 6 a.m. when the world is quiet, but what about the middle of the day? Our next trigger is finding a spare 5 minutes when your schedule is totally packed. and that stress is really starting to creep in. Maybe you're between meetings, or you just finished a super heavy lecture. Instead of doom scrolling to decompress, we can use the 5-minute rule to maintain our mental wellness. The action here is a 5-minute mental health recharge. You can use tools like Headspace or Simple Habit. You absolutely do not need a massive mountain of free time or a week-long silent retreat to de-stress. These bite-sized 5-minute sessions of guided mindfulness or meditation act as a really powerful system reset. It lowers your heart rate, clears out all that mental clutter, and builds long-term emotional resilience, right smack in the middle of a chaotic day. Okay, now for the heavy lifting. Let's move to section 3, hacking your study routine to tackle those really difficult tasks. Let's see how this builds into our hardest work using a highly specific, totally relatable daily trigger, pouring your first cup of coffee, or, tea or whatever your morning beverage of choice happens to be. You already do this every single day without fail, right? It's completely automatic. So we're going to piggyback our most difficult, friction-heavy task right on top of this automatic trigger. The targeted action here is committing to just 5 minutes of studying, maybe writing a few lines of code, or solving a couple of math problems immediately after you pour that cup. Again, you are actively bypassing your brain's alarm system. Think about it. If you tell your brain, hey, we need to read 3 chapters right now, it is going to flood you with procrastination signals. But if you say, look, we're just going to look at this math problem for 5 minutes, the resistance just melts away. And what happens next is this beautiful cognitive loop, the friction to flow journey. You sit down for your 5 minutes. Suddenly, that intense mental resistance just completely drops. And because objects in motion tend to stay in motion, follow through just kind of happens naturally. Next thing you know, you look up and an hour has passed. You've entered a flow state. That frequent small success of simply starting yields this real sense of pride, and that pride makes starting again tomorrow even easier. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of our explainer. Section 4, consistency always beats intensity. And this brilliantly illustrates a huge problem. Culturally, we always celebrate intensity, right? The toxic myth of the 12-hour marathon cram session. But we know that's fueled by high mental friction, and it almost always leads to severe burnout, practically guaranteeing you're going to dread starting the next time. On the flip side, we have the science-backed reality of consistency, 5-minute daily bursts. This relies on super low mental resistance, utilizes those frequent small successes we talked about, and builds this unstoppable compounding momentum over time. So I want to leave you with a thought here on our final slide. The tools are right in front of you and the science is super clear. The massive, intimidating goals in your life, they don't actually require superhuman willpower. They just require a tiny 5-minute commitment to cross the starting line. The friction is very real, but the flow is waiting right on the other side. So I have to ask you, how will you use your next 5 minutes? Go ahead, set a timer, and just start. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer.